You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News. The news show that talks to newsmakers from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about where my tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. Well, today my guest to help us with this goal is Laura Gillen, who is running for Congress in New York's 4th District in the Democratic Party. The seat currently occupied by Congresswoman Kathleen Rice. Now, if you recognize her name, it's because back in 2017, Laura was elected supervisor of the town of Hempstead. Welcome to this week's Long Island News. How are you?
How are you today?
Pretty good. I've been reading some of the things, but I have a whole list here of questions, and I'm sure you get plenty of them.
It's the nature of the business.
Yeah, really. You've been labeled by some of the unions here at Nassau Community College as pro-union, pro-education candidate. Can you explain your position on that, seeing as we're on college radio right now?
Sure. I mean, I am lucky to enjoy the broad support of labor. I have received the endorsement of almost every union. And that is because I believe that unions are the lifeblood of preserving the middle class in this country. I think we're looking at a time where the cost, as many of your students know, the cost of achieving higher education has become almost unaffordable for a large number of students. And I think unions actually provide a pathway to a lucrative career where you could maybe not take on as much educational debt and find an alternate career in a trade that will enable you to support your family and continue to live here on Long Island. And I think it's really vital that we preserve that pathway for young men and women who want to make that choice. So I am very much in favor of supporting labor, and I'm glad to have the support back. Yeah.
And it looks like, today we see more and more, I guess Amazon, some of their places have been unionized, and Starbucks. And I agree with you. I think it's a great trend. I don't think the middle class has a shot unless they band together and collective bargaining. That's, exactly. That's the big thing. And let's hope more of them get that idea, because it really is. I think you're right on the money. That's the only way that the middle class is going to get a leg up somehow to battle all the forces that are keeping them. Interestingly, we talk about the Federal Reserve, and every time they come in and they want to, okay, we need to stop the inflation, but they only seem to look at people's wages. I never ever hear any of these financial people talking about the inflationary impact of giant corporate profits. That never seems to be in the conversation. It's always about raising the interest rate so we can lower salaries and tamp the people down. That's annoying.
It's a challenge when you see inflation. About the best way to react. There's countervailing concerns. You want people to have jobs. You want people to be able to spend money and stimulate our economy. But yet, when there's too much overstimulation, we have to do something to bring prices down. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go over my words here. So there are these completely diametrically opposed forces at work, and where the happy medium is always sometimes elusive to find. But we have to do something to address the cost issue. I am a mother of 4 kids. I go to the grocery store. I am paying education costs. So these kitchen table issues are near and dear to me. They're something that I experience every day. They're not just something to talk about on a campaign like they are for my opponent. There's something that I really want to do something to fix about, and not just for political gamesmanship or showmanship, but because I live this existence. I pay property taxes. My opponent doesn't pay property taxes. According to legal records, he lives with his mother and father. So I'm raising 4 children in this community, and I care about the issues that the most of the constituents in this issue care about, in the district care about.
Mm-hmm. But that's, and I thought about that when I was reading some things, last night, is that, Laura Gillen's a mom and a wife, and so she is plugged into the same issues that everyone else is
Absolutely. My daughter plays lacrosse. I sit on the lacrosse fields with Republicans, Democrats, independents, people who don't think about politics at all. And I hear the issues that are concerning to the families across this district, because I am raising a family across this district. I am raising children. I am concerned about their safety in schools. I am concerned about the price of groceries. This is my daily existence, and the rising cost of higher education. I have 2 children in college right now, and I know the burden that it puts on my family to pay that in addition with my other bills. So that's something that I will be a champion for, because I live the same existence that my constituents do.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. And my next thing here is we want to mention some issues that you put front and center on your campaign website. You say you want to, here we go, fight to lower the cost of living. We just talked about that, really. So another issue you mentioned, and this is big, the SALT deduction. Yes. SALT, of course, stands for state and local taxes. And under the former president, we were limited to sort of write off only $10,000. Right. Which here in New York does not cover enough. We spoke to Tom Swazi, and that was his big thing to try to get that done. He did not. What do you think? How do you approach that to get something like that?
Look, it's bad tax policy. It was designed strictly to punish states like New York, where we have very high property taxes. Everybody in this district, everybody in this state should be able to write off their state and local taxes without a cap. I will work across the board, across the aisle, to try to get this done, because it hurts Republicans here as well as Democrats here, and blanks and people who aren't affiliated with any party. It needs to be done, and I will work every day in Congress to make sure that happens.
Yeah, that's great.
And I have a record of doing that in the town of Hempstead. I mean, I faced constant obstruction, especially by my opponent, for just simple, nonpartisan good government initiatives, like this one would be in Congress, but I managed to get a lot of things done, like refinancing our debt, lowering taxes, cutting out waste and abuse, and passing ethics reforms. I managed to get that done despite their obstruction, and I'll be able to get this done, I think, in Congress.
Oh, that would be great. I had a conversation with Senator Brooks last week, I guess, and he said if we can get that done, and it means about $15 billion to the local economy. It's not just it would make not
a talking point. It's a real concern, and will have a dramatic impact on our economy here.
I think we would all see a difference around us if we had a little bit more. Well, here's a big one too. Now, you say you want to advocate for common sense gun safety laws, and maybe you could explain that and how or what you're thinking about on that.
Sure. I mean, people like my opponent, they champion the causes of the NRA and their agenda, but this is a common sense agenda. No one's saying we're going to repeal the Second Amendment. No one's saying that law-abiding citizens who engage in hunting can't go and get a gun to go and pursue that activity. What we're talking about is common sense. Universal background checks. Okay. Why would we ever not want that? To make sure that we're not giving guns to criminals. Red flag laws, even stronger than the ones that have already been passed, to make sure we're keeping guns out of the hands of mentally ill people. That will prevent suicides, and will also prevent the mass casualties that we've seen perpetrated by mentally ill people who go and kill children, kill people at parades, kill people at places of worship. It's just common sense. And then we also need to get assault weapons off our streets. There's no justification that any normal person needs a military assault rifle for any purpose. It's common sense. And if those were off the streets and banned, we would be a lot safer. And that's what I want to do to make all of us safer. There's no reason a parent should be terrified of sending their children to school because they might get shot.
Yeah. Well, that's a tough one. It's starting to feel to me as though the gun issue is kind of like the $15 minimum wage. We're going to talk about it for 20 years. And I mean, already with the minimum wage thing, $15 is not enough. Yeah. If you're living on Long Island and you're taking, or your gross income is $600 a week, you're in trouble.
If you elect people like me who really care about keeping people safe, then we could see that change happen a lot faster.
Okay. Now, voter turnout was kind of low in the primaries. You think you can motivate the Democrats to get out and vote in your district?
Sure. I mean, the primary was the the most unusual election, I think, that we've had here in recent memory in New York. I mean, we never have had a congressional primary in August. Also in like the worst week you could possibly have an election, because it's right before Labor Day, right before kids go back to school. It's known to be a week that is one of the most sought after vacation weeks.
Wow.
So we had, and people just didn't know that there was an election because they're not used to voting for a primary election in August. Mm-hmm. So I think that explains why the turnout was so low. For the general election, I think we can expect to see certainly better turnout. It's an even year. There's always better turnout in even years. There's a marquee race for the governor, and I think our voters are motivated by the issues like choice and guns that are going to make them want to come out and vote this year.
Isn't that the ideal in, I guess, a democracy or a democratic government? The ideal is everybody go vote.
Yes.
I didn't never realize this, but in some countries it's like a law. You have to vote. It's not a suggestion. You better show and be able to show your proof that you voted. Because we're all about freedoms and stuff, we don't like to hear things like that. But if that's really effective, but then we also have the same idea. I did a show a little while ago about gerrymandering and how that's been around for over 200 years, and yet everyone that looks at it considers it a corruption of the electoral process, because the politicians are picking their voters rather than the voters are picking the politicians. I don't know. I think we've lived with it so long that people don't even realize, I think, what this is. They
realized it with their last redistricting, so that's why the maps got thrown out. And the maps are being thrown out in some places and not in others, but it certainly has come to the forefront, I think, this year with all the redistricting battles and the efforts by both sides to kind of draw districts that favor their candidates.
Yeah, redrawing the playing board, it can be very convoluted to try to follow how exactly it works to push people to vote for one or another. And the districts, that special master or whatever he was that created that first district, it was like the skin of the South Shore of Long Island, and it went all the way up into Westchester. And immediately you say, well, what do people in Westchester have in common with people in East Hampton or Wantaw, for that matter? Is there a way? I mean, can they come to an agreement? Obviously, the districts, I think, have to be redrawn. What is it, every 10 years?
Yes, after the census.
Okay, so that's what determines, because the census changes our view of things now. Okay.
The census also, tells you what your population is, your representation in the House, and the number of seats that you get, delegates or representatives you get to send to the House of Representatives is based on population. So we lost a seat in New York this cycle because our population decreased. So that's why you do it every 10 years. And then, on both sides, we've seen people try to draw districts to dilute voters of one particular party so that they can ensure that their candidates will be successful in more areas. It's a big problem across the country where we've seen this happen. I think more by the GOP than the Democrats, but it's really whoever gets to control the redistricting process can do that.
So there really is no way that, I'm talking.
There is a way you can challenge it in court. And so some of those challenges have been successful and some of those challenges have not been successful.
And when it's successful, what do? Do they redraw the district?
They do what they did here. They say you have to take another crack at it and redraw the district again.
Right.
In the instance of New York, it was unfortunate because it was so late in the game. That's why the primary got delayed. And they brought in a special master to draw districts who doesn't know this area at all and doesn't know this region at all. So there were real problems with the map that this special master drew. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, really. Well, anyway, okay. And you've also spoken out about the cashless bail law and your opponent's stance on it. How do you feel about that?
I think my opponent has no platform. He has no ideas. All he has are lies. He is trying to scare people into voting for him. That's his strategy. He's running on this platform, which is he's putting out mailers that are patently false. They're knowing false, defamatory statements. I have been on the record, and it's in written publications. And I've just posted a video of me in 2019, at the time this law went through, speaking against the cashless bail law because of the concern that while we do need to address some inequities in our criminal justice system, we also need to make sure that dangerous people aren't getting out on the street. I thought the law was rushed, and I thought it was not well thought through. And I spoke out against that law. Mm-hmm. So my opponent is knowingly lying to the public about my record. So that's where I stand on this, and it's a shame, and it's a shame. I hope people will look to the. You can go online at my social media and see the video of me in 2019 answering on the record about my position on that law. So It's just fear mongering.
Well, I think a lot of people would have agreed with you at the time. That you're right. It really came out fast. There were they hadn't plugged all those loopholes, and some bad things happened in the very beginning, but I think they're still tweaking it, aren't they?
They should continue to tweak it, and they should talk to prosecutors and law enforcement, as well as criminal defense attorneys, should try to find the right solution. Right. Nobody wants a kid who stole a bag of potato chips to have to go to jail because he can't afford bail. I think everybody would agree on that, but we cannot let dangerous people or serial criminals back out in the street with a revolving door.
Yeah. I think we had the police commissioner on a couple of times. We've talked about this. We all know why the law came to be in the first place. And it was some 17-year-old kid that was accused of a crime. He was not convicted of anything, spent 3 years in Rikers Island, and they couldn't find him.
Right.
So, law enforcement, or actually the corrections, how do you have somebody in your custody and you can't find them? It doesn't bode well. So that was the reason why that came about. And I'm sure he was not the only case. That's just the case they put the microscope on. But people can look too. I know it's been said a bunch of times, criminals are getting out. I understand reading some of the stats that really any of the criminal activity that we're talking about was not fed by people who were in that situation. There is no connectivity whatsoever to the, and we also have a problem with truth and lies in this political atmosphere. And my heart goes out to you and every candidate that's out there trying to be an honest candidate, because you're betting on people finding out for themselves. Yeah, that doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy, because
it's a real problem that we have seen the erosion of truth. Truth doesn't matter anymore. They'll just put out completely baseless lies. I'm an attorney. I care very much about making sure that what I say is accurate and that there's a footnote to back it up. But my opponent is just putting flat out lies. It's absolute defamation, libel, slander about me that he knows their lies, but he does not care. So people should really pay attention to that. Do you want an elected official who will just lie to you and say anything to get elected? I'm running on my record of lowering taxes, fighting corruption, working with law enforcement to try to end the rampant corruption in the town of Hempstead, on turning that government into a government that just hands out raises and promotions and jobs to friends and family, to being a more transparent government. And I'm running on the issues that really matter right now, that like choice. I mean, my opponent and his party want to take away the rights of millions of women to have autonomy over their own health care. This should scare every single person listening to this program. Yes. Yep. What is next? They say birth control, marriage equality, all the rights that we've seen, civil rights that we've seen evolve over the years to bring us forward to be a more inclusive and supportive society are at threat right now. And my opponent, Diaz-Esposito, is a direct threat to every woman in this country and anybody who loves women.
I want to remind our listening audience that are listening to this week's Long Island News right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. And we're here with Laura Gillen talking about the state of campaigning and politics. You've also had some harassment from your I don't know what quarter it's coming from, but can you elaborate a little on?
Yeah, this is it's guerrilla campaign tactics. I was at a street fair, and this is a place where I used to campaign with my children. I used to bring them so they could go get cotton candy and go on the rides. And it's a family event. It's a nice thing for families to go to. And so I've campaigned there, for every campaign that I've had, where you just go and you're shaking hands and talking to voters. Mm-hmm. And I had, one of the extremists who supports my opponent come up to me. I politely told him, I'm talking to voters right now. If you want to do an interview, you can call my campaign and I'll do an interview with you, or maybe later. And he started chasing me around, putting a camera in my face, and interrupting me from when I was trying to talk to people on the street to hear about what they care about. He was frightening me. He was frightening the people that I was talking to. And then he posted this inflammatory video and his rhetoric on social media and stirred up people in a frenzy. They put my home address on social media and told people to come to my house. Now I'm grateful. I just had the police outside, they're cruising by to make sure that nobody's appearing here. Mm-hmm. No one should go to anybody's house. That is outrageous on any side of the aisle. I would condemn that. I would never tell anyone to go to whatever house my opponent actually lives in. Campaigning is one thing, but risking the safety of your opponent by your lies is outrageous conduct, and my opponent should be ashamed of himself.
Yeah. And there's no other recourse for that, right? I mean, other than getting private security.
That's kind of what you're left to. I mean, we were able to get the post taken down. And so far we've been monitoring to make sure nothing else like that goes up. I reached out to the Rockville Center Police, and they've been really great about sending people here just to make sure that everything's okay and there's nobody at my house.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to me, it's just that
I have 4 children. I have a little girl who lives here. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, it smacks of Banana Republic when I hear things like that.
Exactly.
We've devolved to a pretty low point when you think about what we as a populace have accepted. Candidates do A, B, C, D. Oh, that's okay. We let it go. So
it's not okay. It's not okay.
No, it's not okay. It really is not okay. I mean, when someone tells me they're a patriot, I say, okay, if you're a patriot, part of your job is to keep an eye on your elected officials and call them out when they do stuff you don't like. That's being a patriot. But it's like now, today, they'll pick on the president. Okay, well, that's part of his job. I mean, he's the focal point. You don't like something he did, right? You talk about it. But then don't turn around and tell me that other guy would have been better.
Right.
That blows my mind. It really does. And we were talking before about the voters having to figure out a lot of this stuff, to wade through the lies and there hasn't been a lot of money for education in the last almost 30 years, and it's evident. It's showing. Because we have a populace that, when Devin Nunes quit Congress, what did he quit Congress for? He quit to become the head of a media empire. And to me, that message was, he felt, and maybe the Republican Party feels, that there's more power in propaganda than there is in Congress. Why would a man give up his Senate seat and go to become the CEO of an entity that's, who knows what they're going to add to the fire? But I'm sure,
Power and money. I'm sure the salary is a lot better.
Yeah. Okay. And again, we spoke about Roe v. Wade, and that should be on every woman's mind. Every woman. And
every man.
Well, yeah.
Lots of men. You have wives, you have sisters, you have daughters, you have girlfriends. If you care about women and you care about their rights, you should care about this issue.
In any event, we only have a couple of minutes left. And what would you like to say to the voters and the people you want to come out?
This is probably the most important election of your lifetime. Our country could go down a really dark path to a dystopian future where half the population are stripped of their rights. We see abortion on the line. And really that people like to just frame it as that, but that's women's ability to make their own medical decisions with their doctors. Mm-hmm. When their life could be on the line. As a woman who's had complicated pregnancies, there's no room for government in that decision. It is a personal healthcare decision. So we see that's just the tipping point. Birth control could be next. And we see my opponent also doesn't want to keep you safe. He's all about public safety. He lost his own police gun by leaving it unattended on the front seat of his car. He put a loaded gun into the hands of a criminal by doing that because it was stolen by a criminal. And he wants to protect legislation that is proffered by the NRA. He doesn't want to get assault rifles off our streets. He's a risk. He's a risk, and he doesn't tell the truth. He lies. He lies, and all his entire campaign is based on a lie. First, he tried to come at me about taxes. He raised taxes. I never raised taxes. I'm proud of what I did in the town of Hempstead, and everything I did in the town was a good government agenda, not a partisan agenda. And that's what the voters of this district can rely on me to do, to be a voice, to speak out against the other side when they're wrong, but even to speak out against my side when I don't think they're doing the right thing. And that's what I did on that misguided law. I spoke out, even though it wasn't the party line. And I'm the honest representative who faces the same issues that you do, who's living the same life that you are living right now, raising a family, trying to pay for college,
right,
paying those kitchen tables issues, grocery bills, heating costs. Oh, and my opponent also is directly responsible for energy bills being twice as high in the town of Hempstead because he killed a bill that I put forward that would have saved residents, based on published national grid rates, about 50% on their energy bills right now when they could really use that help.
Well, thank you very much. My guest has been Laura Gillen, who's running for Congress in New York's 4th District in the Democratic Party. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Well, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. We remind you to listen every Friday at 3 p.m. right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.